Let's talk about the Concilium. What do you know about the Concilium deemed with implementing Vatican II, Sacrosanctum Concilium?
I'm not a liturgist, and I haven't really studied that period of time between 1965 and 1970. I think those were the crucial years that the Concilium was in action. But I do know that I always think that the fathers of the council would have been surprised to see the Mass that ended up in the Missal of 1970. I don't think they intended that to be the way it ended up being. Now, they all probably went home to their dioceses and just left it to the Concilium Sacrosanctum Concilium is a very beautiful document, but it doesn't...
Very popular, too.
Very popular.
Like the bishops, almost unanimously.
Yeah, it was passed, and everybody thought that it was a beautiful document, and it was the first one, I think, wasn't it? It was the first one that was passed. And but it didn't get into specifics about what the Mass is going to look like. But it was the fruit of this liturgical movement that had gone on for decades, since the beginning of the 20th century, really. And so I think that what happened during those years was something that just got out of control. I think that whoever was driving it, Bugnini, Archbishop Bugnini, was really the kind of principal architect, I think, of the new Mass. But I think that it just deviated from what the fathers really thought the Mass should be. The Reform, there was going to be more use of the vernacular. There was going to be more use of Scripture, especially. There was going to be changes, and I think they all knew that. But, the wholesale changes that happened, I don't think were as organic and as sort of the fruit, you might say, of Sacrosanctum Concilium that they thought it would be. And they left it up to the Concilium to take care of all of the, basically the rewriting of the Mass. So, like I said, I'm not a liturgist. I didn't study that, but I can't help but think that the fathers of the Church, or fathers of the Second Vatican Council, were a bit surprised when that finally came out. But there were probably some that really wanted a radical change in the way that we celebrated, in the way that we have the Mass. And it was a time where everything was changing. What the worst possible time, 65 to 70, really is when the Concilium was in full activity. It's just in the culture, it was just a time of revolution. So in a way, it's not too surprising that the Mass was also kind of caught up into that. And I think too, bishops thought that the earlier Mass was so calculated, you might say, or so structured, which in some ways is its beauty, and so without deviation, and they thought that it should be more flexible and more have other elements to it than just what it was. And I think they probably thought that the priest